A very good afternoon and warm welcome to this live session. I'm Dr. Vaibhav Pandit, and today we are going to see the doubts related to the topic that we are having, the RGB color model from our subject image processing. Already we are covered with few of our live sessions where we have solved your doubts related to the image processing subject, and now let us see what are the details of the RGB color model and the associated concepts. So here we start with, as we have the RGB color model, what are the meanings of the terms associated to the R, G and B? We shall definitely discuss, but we shall focus first of all the details of the term color into the subject image processing, because whatever we have been learned so far is basically applicable to that of the grayscale image, and now with this particular topic we have a switch from the grayscale image processing to that of the color image processing. That is why the very important and the usual question asked in your examination is like, what is the significance of color in image processing? So this is the most important question because it covers the complete understanding of the role of the term color in the field of image processing, basically, which is a part of signal processing. Image is a two-dimensional signal. Here we go. So as we talk about what is exactly the color and further its significance to this particular domain of image processing, we must say that the color is the very important aspect of any of the object under visualization that we usually record and get that particular information represented as the image, and most especially the digital image we work further for. So one of the most important aspect for any of the object, whenever you are capturing the image of any person that is ready for passport photograph, so his face will be the object. Whenever you are capturing the photograph of any of the scenario, may it be the hill, the forestry, the river, the land, the buildings. So these are the various kinds of the objects that usually with the help of our own human visual system we discriminate based on the color here. So the objects are of different color, and this color is just very much helpful for further processing of that particular information, and that here we take for the image processing here. So here I have a query from the student Ravindra Chaudhary. What is the difference between signal processing and image processing? See Ravindra, the basic domain, either you take the digital signal processing subject as the base. So whatever the information we need to process to achieve the applications completed here, so that is basically the signal. So there are various forms of the signal. When you get the background from the signals and system, thereupon you have the types of the signals here. The signal usually we deal with, just I am talking, this is the audio signal. Whenever you are enjoying certain videos, so that is also a signal. Whenever you are writing certain text and sending it to any another person, that is also a signal. So the tools, the operations that we can apply on such information, that we treat as the signal for the betterment and for completion of the various suitable application, is nothing but the signal processing. Image processing, you can take it as a part of the signal processing, because image is also a signal. So whenever I just show, I just represent certain kind of information by taking the two dimensions as like this. So here the intersection of the two dimensional axis, here I consider it to be the origin. So this is the origin of the image, and in this two dimensional plane, if I represent by the number of rows and the number of columns here, so the columns here the vertical way I need to get for. So generally the order of this particular dimension we can represent by m by n. So m number of rows here we have on this dimension and n number of columns here we have in this particular dimension. So whatever the information you have in this particular image plane, so this is nothing but a two-dimensional signal. So that is why the tools, the techniques for the betterment of the image as a signal, what we do is basically a part of the signal processing. So I hope the difference between signal processing and image processing has got clear to you. So as we are having our focus, first of all, before starting the RGB terms of the color model here, we are focusing the what is the significance of color in image processing. So this is how the color is very important for any of the object under the scenario that we are going to record and to form as like the image here. So in this regard, there are two very important factors to be considered. So I must say the use of this particular term, that it is a color, in the domain of image processing has two very important principal factors. The first factor is it is basically a descriptor. We must say it is not simple descriptor, but it is a powerful descriptor, and it is very much helpful for simplification of the object identification and the extraction of the information from the scenario. As I have a lot of videos available on the online platform through Ekeeda regarding the details of the image processing basically here. So in the beginning lectures I have covered the fundamental steps of the image processing. So here the object identification is also one of the fundamental process associated with the digital image processing here. So that is quite made simplified by the use of color as one of the discriminating object here. The next factor we can go for is, as we are the human beings, we can discern thousands of color shades and the intensity levels, and as compared to about only 2 dozens of shades of the gray here. So up till now, whatever the live sessions we have been arranging for the image processing, we were confined to the grayscale images here. So grayscale, it means like the black and white images, and between the black and the whiteness, there are certain shades here. When you have 8-bit environment for representation of any image information, so that time 2 to the power n we shall substitute by 8 here. So we get the total 256 shades. So we start at 0 level and we end at 255 to be the maximum representing the intensity, or the max intensity is nothing but the complete brightness, the whiteness you see here. So as we are the human beings, we are benefited by the use of the image processing. As with this particular topic we are talking about the color image processing, I must say here. So we human beings, we discuss the thousands of color shades, but we have a limitation. When we are given the input as only the grayscale image, we can discuss about only the 2 dozen shades of the gray level here. So with the color images, it is benefit that we can have separation of lot of kind of the information available into the scenario. So as we compare the grayscale image processing to that of the color image processing, the color image processing will be more evolved, it will be more sophisticated, and definitely in this particular digital world we are having a lot of benefits by having this color in image processing. So these are the two very important factors. More information with respect to the second factor I will like to add, where the second factor is particularly important in manual image analysis, that is when performed by the human beings, as just now I have talked about. So with the term color added to our subject title image processing, we have color image processing, that we can abbreviate as, sometimes the textbooks also refer to as CIP. So CIP stands for the color image processing. So let us just have the overview of color image processing in your examination as well. You may be asked, give the complete insights of the color image processing. So thereupon this overview that I am going to discuss here will be a roadmap for your answer to develop. So here CIP stands for the color image processing. we can divide this CIP in two major areas. So these two major areas are, the first one, the full color image processing, and the second one is pseudo color image processing. So pseudo stands for the falseness. The next session I am definitely taking it for the pseudo color image processing. The added details you shall definitely get when you attend that lecture as well. So as we compare these two areas, those are a part of the color image processing, what I abbreviate as CIP here. Regarding the full color image processing, what we call the first category, the images in the question typically are acquired with a full color sensor, such as a color TV camera or a color scanner here. And here these are now used in a broad range of application, including the applications are like the publications, visualizations, and the internet media here. So this is all with respect to the full color image processing that we are directly getting benefited from. The second one that I have been like the pseudo color image processing. So there it is a problem that one is assigning a color to a particular monochrome intensity or the range of intensities here, and with respect to this particular second category, the pseudo color image processing, most of the times the research areas as like the image classification, if you go for example in a certain geographical area, if you need to find out the crop production, and that too with the help of the sensors mounted onto the satellite platform here. So what the satellites will do, it will capture the image, and based on the reflections from different objects in that particular geographical area, see the crops will be different. The wheat will have a different kind of reflection than the jowar, the rice will have different kind of reflection, the other crop types also will have different kind of reflections. All those have been captured by the sensor situated at the satellite platform here. So when we apply different random colors to the different reflections and develop an image or a map, we say here, so that is basically the best example of the pseudo color image processing here. So these are the two major areas which combine to have the color image processing in all. So as of now, as we have been covering the grayscale techniques of the image processing here, so what is the applicability of all those techniques to the color image processing? Because in color image processing, one more dimension is to get added here. So that definitely we shall discuss here. So the thing at this particular point is that some of the grayscale techniques that we have learned before are directly applicable to the color images which are different than that of the grayscale images, and there are certain techniques that we have learned that are best suited for the grayscale methods. They have to be a little bit of the modification and the consistency we can continue so that it best matches the property of the color spaces where we have the representation of the color images here. So this is just the overview I have given you for the color image processing here. Now next to that we shall have a look on what are the color image fundamentals, because the RGB color model you cannot directly understand when you are not having the strong fundamentals of the color image here. That is why just a recap or introduction here we shall be having for the color image fundamentals here. So as we have discussed, we the human beings are the end users of whatever the applications here we develop for the benefit of the society through the image processing techniques here. So that is why the process that we follow by the human brain in perceiving and interpreting color is basically we are having the psychological phenomenon here, and whatever the mechanism that God has gifted us, it is not fully understood to anybody. Whatever the digital devices we have right now, these are basically the mimics of our human systems we have, we have the natural sensors with the help of which we get the information, we process it in your brains, and then finally we take the actions based on the processing what we have made inside our brains here. So the digital devices those we are using, we are also make them learn. That is why this particular era has come to be. So now when we talk about the physical nature of the color term, we are coming to the topic that can be expressed in the formal basis supported by the experimental and theoretical research which can bring the improvement here. So the history for the development for this particular domain of color image processing, we can trace back to the year 1666 here. So it was the experiment made by the Sir Isaac Newton. The findings we can have one by one here. So the experiment was like a beam of sunlight that is passing through a glass prism. The usual experiment you must have studied in your the science subjects or signals and system whenever you have learned the transformation tool, especially here. So the emerging beam of light that is not white in color, but it consists a continuous spectrum of the colors ranging from violet to red. Seven colors we talk about, the whip wire we talk about. So the experimentation made by the Sir Isaac Newton was like this. On the left hand side you see the white light that is incidenting on one of the surface of the optical prism, and on the another end here we get seven different colors, and this is the optical electromagnetic range of frequencies basically, and this visual range is in between the infrared frequency and that of the ultraviolet frequency here. So when we are talking about the frequency, you must have a knowledge from the EM spectrum diagram here, EM standing for the electromagnetic here. So here the topic of interest in this particular diagram is the visible spectrum you see here, which is more colorful. So this is what the ultraviolet, we are not interested right now for understanding the color image processing, not even the infrared. So in both of these regions also we have the signal processing, especially the image processing you can see here. So this is the region we have the corresponding, the wavelength values are marked on this particular diagram. We can also get them converted into the frequency values here, and you can see from one end to another end when we move on, the switch is not a sudden. See, the color in the spectrum is not ending the suddenly or abruptly here, but rather there it is the smooth or the gradual change from one color to the another color in this particular visible spectrum here. So this was the experiment made by the Sir Isaac Newton, who has introduced us to the term color, and then we have been using it in various applications here. Now the basic thing, if we see the color, what we perceive from the object as we visualize the scenario here is basically determined by the nature of the light that is reflected from the object. In one of our live sessions for this image processing, the image formation we have seen. So that diagram I hope you remember here. So here for the image information that we sense after the reflection here. So whatever the body of the object is there that reflects the light is balanced in all the visible wavelengths, and that appears white to the observer here, that we can differentiate with the help of prism here. So a body that favors the reflectance in a limited range will give us different colors with different shades here. So here it was a diagram for the image formation. So now you can see here for the optical type of the image processing, I must say here we have sun, the only source of illumination in daytime, that is supposed to have illumination of the objects with the incidence of the light rays from sun to that particular object, and the object here we are showing a small plant here that is reflecting all that particular energy into its surrounding, and our sensor for the human being is the eye that captures this particular reflection, and this particular type of the information is formed onto the retina. What we have seen, the complete anatomy of the human visual system here. So in this particular reflection there are different parameters of more interest. As we go into the details of the color image processing here, one of the important parameter is the intensity level, and with the intensity level also we have already completed the representation of the digital images here. So this intensity from our eye point of view, as we are discussing, is basically a weighted function of the three values. So these three values are nothing but the red, green and blue. Here the initials, the letters only we are referring to: R for red, G for green and B for blue here. So in general, the human eye perception is not having the weight each component at the identical level, but it can be little bit of the randomness here. So here for the example formulation here we provide. So in this formulation you can see the net intensity is formed by the three components. So one is red, another is green and the last one is the blue. You can see the multiplicants to these red, green and blue. We have 0.299 multiplied to that of the red, whereas 0.587 multiplied to the green component and 0.144 multiplied to the blue component here. So here, as we have assumption that these three components are nothing but the three different light sources with the specific colors here. So the green light, as we see, is having multiplied by the large value, as we compared the coefficients here, will be the brightest than that of the red and then that of the blue component. So this way we have the general visualization of the scenario, and based on to this particular information we make the judgments here. So I hope this particular background is definitely helpful to us, what I suppose to term as the color image fundamentals here. Now in this particular domain, the three definitions are very important. These are also a part of the concepts related to this particular domain, and these are nothing but the radiance, luminance and brightness. As we need to go for the RGB color model here, these three definitions should be very much clear to your mind here. So the three basic quantities that are used to describe the quality of the chromaticity of the light source. Chromaticity is referring to a specific frequency range. A specific frequency range shows a specific color, what we call a chroma here. So these are the quantities. We have the title radiance, then the luminance and finally the brightness here. Let us talk about the first term, that it is the radiance. What is radiance? You may also encounter the questions in your examination. Write down the definitions of the radiance and describe them and all that way. So radiance is the total amount of energy that flows from the light source, and it is usually measured in terms of the watts. So for the different sources, those sources will be having the more power associated in terms of the wattages here. The radiance for those particular sources will be comparatively more here. So I hope the radiance term is clear. Next to that we have the luminance. See, the luminance is measured generally in terms of the lumens here. The abbreviation to represent in symbolic format is most of the times by LM here, and it is basically the information regarding the measurement of the energy from the observer point of view and the energy that we perceive from the light source here. For better understanding, we can have a simple example where the light emitted from a source operating in the far infrared region of the spectrum could have significant energy. What just now we have talked about the first definition, that it is the radiance, but an observer would hardly perceive it, and it is the luminance having the value to be equal to 0 here. So after radiance and that of the luminance, we have the third one that we call brightness here. So brightness is not the objective thing to measure for. It is of course giving us the information, but into a subjective manner here. So here we can call the brightness to be one of the subjective descriptor here, and that is practically impossible to measure here. That is why we have these particular color models as like the RGB we are going to talk about. So this embodies the achromatic notion of the intensity and is one of the key factors in describing the color sensation here. Now getting back to the anatomy of the eye, where the absorption of the light, which is basically a reflection from the various objects in the surroundings, a part of the scenario we intend to record for, or for which we expect the image to be formed here. So let us talk about what way the absorption of light by the human eye is done here. So I hope you have attended my previous session where the actual senses in our body we have discussed about. Of course, eye is the sensor because of which we can have visualization of all the surroundings here. But when you see the anatomy of the eye, there are certain receptors. Those receptors are the cones. The cones are the senses. Those are there inside our eye, and these are responsible because of which we have a colorful vision. If cones are not there in our eye, if you have the eye structure without cones, everything you will look like the grayscale visualization here. It won't be a colorful visualization. So these are the cones responsible. So in how much quantity these cones are available in our eye, that it is 6 to 7 millions of cones are present into the human eye, and here the cones we can have sorted into the three groups. These three groups very important, that is why we call the principal sensing categories, and these are roughly into the redness, the greenness and that of the blueness. So these cones are sensing, these three groups of cones are sensing the red light in general, green light and that of the blue light, you must say here. Now the approximate 65% of all the count of the cones that we have here are very sensitive to that of the red light, whereas when we talk about the green light, 33% of the cones are sensitive to the greenness here, whereas only 2% of the cones are sensitive to that of the blue color. All the information we have already covered in one of our previous session, or also you can go to our digital platform where you find all the lectures here. So though the percentage of number of cones is reducing from red to green and green to that of the blue here, comparatively the blue cones are the most sensitive among the three. That is why a very short number of blue cones also are enough for the colorful vision here. Now let us visualize a graphical illustration where we have the absorption of light by the red, green and blue cones in the human eye plotted as a function of the wavelength here. So here you see on the horizontal axis, here we have the markings right like the 400, 450, 500, 550, 600, 650 up to 700. These are the representations of the wavelength measured in terms of the nanometers here. So either you plot about the wavelengths, or if you take the frequency, that will also work about. So these are the representations of the different colors. Here we are having the bluish purple, then the purplish blue, then blue green, green, yellowish green, up to the red. Here we have what we talk about the waveguide here. And when we plot the absorption level onto the vertical axis here in terms of the arbitrary units here, you see the three curvatures like this. Here we have for the blue, then for the green, the middle one, and at last the red here. The concerned peak values for the wavelengths we have been marked here for 445 nanometers, 535 nanometers for green, and 575 nanometers for the red here. So I hope regarding the absorption of the light by the human eye, the cones responsible for the sensing here, you are now familiar with. More information we can add regarding this, that due to the absorption characteristics of the human eye, the characteristics we have just plotted in this particular graph here. So the colors are seen as the variable combinations of the red, green and blue. That is why we have our topic, the RGB color model. So generally we can say that the human visual system senses the color primarily in terms of the red component, then the green component, and finally the blue component here. So the standardization we can make with the help of the CIE, that is the International Commission of the Illumination here, and these are the three values just now we have talked about, and this is from this particular committee that is standardizing all the details with respect to this particular research domain, I must say here. So having the three specific primary colors of the wavelength for the purpose of standardization does not mean that these three fixes the RGB components acting alone here. So there are other alternatives also. The primary colors can also be added, as like we have the magenta formed by the red plus blue, can formed by green plus blue, then yellow formed by the red plus green also. So these findings will also give us the other types of the color models here. Mixing of these particular three primaries or the secondary ones with the opposite primary color in the right intensities produces the white light, for which we have made the differentiation in terms of the colors here. Let us visualize another illustration where we shall have the differentiation of the primary and the secondary colors of the light and the pigments here. So here we see the mixtures of light on the left hand side, whereas the mixtures of the pigments here we see on the right hand side. See, the mixtures of light is nothing but the additive primaries here. At the center you have the white color here, and then the components, the individual red, green, blue, and the combinations of the two pairs, you see yellow, can and the magenta here. Whereas the subtractive primaries, the mixture of the pigments, when you see at the center, there it is the black. The individual components you can refer to in the sequence, that is magenta, yellow, can, and the combinations of these two pairs wise when you go for, that is the red, green and the blue. At the center you find the black here. So the primary and secondary colors of the light and pigment are illustrated with the help of this particular diagram here. So as just now we are covered with the three very important definitions associated to this particular domain, and this was with respect to the radiance, luminance and brightness. In few of the times the brightness is also discussed along with the two terms. Here we are going to discuss the hue and saturation. So brightness, hue and saturation is also the parts to represent the colorness into the image here. So we must have the knowledge of what are the hue and saturation along with the brightness. I hope the brightness is very simple and clear to you people. And then we can see what is the structure of the RGB color model. The title is RGB color model, but RGB color model, I hope it is very simple to understand as far as your examination point of view. But the background of this particular RGB color model is this way. I'm going, and that will definitely help you as you work with any of the type of the color model. So with respect to the brightness, hue and saturation, I must say that the characteristics, those are generally used to distinguish the one color from another one, are these three: brightness, hue and saturation. The first one, when we take brightness, it embodies the chromatic notion of the intensity, or directly few of the times the brightness is compared to the intensity levels. The examples I have discussed for the 8-bit representation of the image, we have total 256 options here. So right from 0 to 255, when we plot, we can have the linear changes into the brightness levels with the intensity levels here. So after brightness, the new thing here it is for you people is the hue. So hue is nothing but the attribute that is associated with the very dominant wavelength into the mixture of light waves. So light is a signal, that is in terms of the waves here, for which we have the markings of wavelength or the frequency here, and the reflections in terms of this particular light here we have, and the dominant component from that when it is found out, so that time it will be with respect to this particular hue component, and it will definitely be the dominant one in visualization of the image into the plane, the two-dimensional plane here. So therefore we call the hue representing a dominant color as perceived by any of the observer here, and we call the object red, orange or yellow based on the understanding of, or the whatever the interpretation we obtain from the hue component here. So after brightness, hue we are covered with. Then saturation. What is saturation? The saturation refers to the relative purity or the amount of the white light mixed with that of the hue here. So how much pure the electromagnetic spectrum, the colors you are obtaining from, is you can measure in terms of the saturation here. So there are certain different colors which we find out as the combination of the primary colors, I must say. For example, we get the pink color as a combination from red and white. The lavender color, most of the times we refer to the combination of violet and that of the white here. So these are less saturated, with the degree of saturation being inversely proportional to the amount of white light added here. So here we proceed with more information for hue and saturation taken together here. So hue and saturation when taken together, these are called as the chromaticity, and therefore a color may be characterized by its brightness and the chromaticity. The chromaticity is taking the information of hue and saturation together here. So these two terms are also applicable and referred by many of the textbooks here. So how much amount of the redness, greenness and blue is needed for formation of any particular color is called as, the values we refer to as tristimulus values here, and generally we can have the notations as like the capital X, capital Y, capital Z. You can also refer to them by the RGB as well here. So we have the simple formulations for the color that is specified by the use of these particular values, or coefficients also you can refer to as. So here we have small x, that is the ratio of individual x divided by the addition of the three. So x, y, z added and are represented in the denominator section here. So for small y, it is the representation of the ratio of capital Y at individual, the tristimulus value divided by the addition of the all the three x, y, z here. And similar is the case for representation of the small z. So from this we can note it down that the addition of these small x, y and z, when we carry out the denominator, it will be the same, x plus y plus z, that is a common. In the numerator you get the same, x plus y plus z in capital casing. So this will be equal to 1 here. So this comes to have 100% of the information that we had sorted out in terms of the redness, greenness and that of the blueness here. Now I just clarify you the term color with respect to the images here, and few of the very important and the usually utilized terminologies associated to this particular domain, especially to the structure of the digital image, are the pixel, sample and the band. Here we have the example visualization of the portions of the color image in all. So you can see a layer with all the cells. I can see here we basically refer to as the pixel or the smallest entity into the image. So these are all into the green color but with different shades here. Next to that, at the middle you see the three layers stacked. So at the top we have red, in the middle we have green and at the bottom here we have blue here. So when we take out one column from the three layers, so we see a stack of the pixels red, then below there it is green, at the bottom here we have the blue here and a separate pixel into a green color. Here we have the representation. So whenever we have to talk about a pixel, so pixel is giving us the information regarding the color of the image at a specific point location. So with the help of what is the number of row and what is the number of column, you can get to that particular specific location and what is the level of intensity for a specific color or the combination of all, you can get the information at. When we talk about the sample, this is nothing but the one dimension of the pixel, and when we talk about the band, we talk about the all samples onto the same layer. See friends, as we have switched from the grayscale image processing to that of the color image processing starting from this particular live session here. So one thing should be clarified, that earlier grayscale image processing or the binary image processing was as such, we had the information in terms of two dimension on a digital screen or a plain paper, you can say here. So in horizontal orientation and in vertical orientation on that particular plane, only two dimensions were needed to represent the information. There were no layers. When you have the layers, you are switching to the multispectral image, and color image is a multispectral here. So multi is representing the multiple numbers. So when multispectral, see the red layer is referring to another frequency value, green layer is referring to a different frequency value, blue layer is referring to some third different frequency value. When you stack together all the three, so you are having the multiple frequency bands and the combined information in the form of the image, you call it to be the color image. So we can also go beyond three number of bands, and these are basically the images in different applications as like that of the remote sensing, and further applications also are there. So the three basic types of the image you must have the knowledge of for our subject image processing. So based on the color, the categorization we simplify in terms of the binary image, in terms of the grayscale image, in terms of the color image. Binary image you people are very much familiar about. So we have the option of only two colors. So either we can have a complete black or a complete white here. Black and white is nothing but the binary image. The binary we refer to in the digital domain to the digits 0 and 1. So when 0 is for the complete darkness, black, and 1 for the complete whiteness, so it is nothing but the black and white image what we refer to in our subject, that is the binary image here. And grayscale image, so grayscale image is having the information as such, in between the complete darkness and complete whiteness there are different shades but no information of the color. So this is nothing but the grayscale image we have been dealing so far, and now it comes color image. So color image contains pixels with the color levels here, and more than two colors can also exist here. So I hope the picture is clear to you, and then we can proceed for the RGB terms here. One of the application of the additive type of the light, here you can get the details for, that is the color TV here. So in the color TV also we have the red component, then the green component and the blue component. You see the three things we have shown in this particular illustration are added and fed as the input to the color monitor, and the combination is giving us the result on the right hand side. What you visualize, everything colorful here. So as the three types we discussed, binary, then gray, and then that the color here. So one must also have the understanding how we can have a conversion of color to the grayscale image also. From the color image we can find out the grayscale image also. So the color image can be converted into the grayscale image. What we need to do, we have to replace the three components RGB by just the intensity level, what we refer to as the luminous value at each location. So location we refer by the name pixel here. So this is the thing, and you can get it converted from color image to that of the grayscale image. Most of the times this is not at all intended, but the cases where we like to have the memory savings, the communications to be made faster, and when the information is of course 100% conveyed in terms of the grain image, then why do you go for that one? So the mathematical expression, just to have this particular, we can just average. So red component added to that of the green component added to the blue component, the average you take, that you divide the addition by the 3, so it will give you a grayscale level value here, and that should be represented at the same location where you have a record of the 3 values, the red, green and the blue here. So the image obtained by this particular method is basically too dark into the red areas and too bright into the blue areas here. So for this conversion RGB to that of the gray here, this particular thing should be avoided for too much of the darkness here. So we can have a simple modification. We can make the use of the weights here. So weights for the corresponding 3 components, we can denote it as W suffix R, W suffix G, W suffix B for the red, green and the blue here. And the value of the weights in general, we can make the use of here. WR is 0.2125, WG is 0.7154 and WB 0.072 here. And the desaturation, the process it is for removing of the RGB components into a linear manner. The mathematical expression here we shall see. So we obtain the R dash G dash B dash by the Y what we have just now formulated here, added to we have K multiplied to the RGB, from where we have a subtraction of the Y component, so that the too much of the darkness should be avoided here. So K is a constant in between 0 and 1 here. So with this background of everything what we have seen up till now, the RGB color model, I say, is very simple to understand here. So RGB is one of the color model. As like the RGB, we have CMY color model, we have the HSI color model as well. So I just give you the clues with respect to this one. So what are the color models? What is the purpose to have the color model to learning? It is most of the times the basic question. Why should we learn this particular topic? What is the benefit of learning this topic? So the purpose of learning the color model or color space, which is also referred to as sometimes by color system. The answer is to facilitate the specification of colors in some standard, and which is generally the accepted way here. So what is a color model? So color model is actually a specification of the coordinate system and a subspace within that system where each color is represented by a single point here. So I hope you have a knowledge of the coordinate system from the vector algebra here. So coordinate system have different reference axis here, and with the help of this reference axis, I say we have the localization or the positioning of a point or other quantities into the three-dimensional space here. Now, as our subject is image processing, we work on to the digital images. So in terms of digital image processing, the hardware oriented models are mostly commonly using the three color models. The first one, the RGB, our today's title. The second one is CMY, and the third one is HSI. So RGB stands for red, green, blue. So color monitors, the broad class of the color video cameras are the application when this particular model is applicable here. CMY stands for the can, magenta, yellow. How these are formed? By just having combination of the two components from the RGB, we have already seen, and sometimes black is also added to it, so that time it becomes CMYK, can, magenta, yellow and black. So for the color printing purpose, these are typically used here. And then we have HSI, hue, saturation and intensity. So I hope with whatever we have learned in this current session, so you are well familiar with the terms of the hue, saturation, intensity was already known to your people. So this all corresponds to the closely with the way human describes and interpret the color here. So these are the three very popular color models. Beyond these three color models, there are also the things. So coming to the first model, that is the RGB color model here. So each color here appears in its primary spectral component. What we have? RGB, red, green and blue. So here, there it is the use of Cartesian coordinate system. Most of the times we refer to it by the name rectangular coordinate system also here. So the color combinations are shown with the help of the geometric diagram. Here we are going to see what we call a color subspace. So a color cube. So let us first of all see a geometry, and the colorful illustration I will definitely follow here. So here you see the three reference axes, those are mutually perpendicular to each other. So you see in the upright orientation, here we have the blue component plotted, whereas green component in the horizontal axis here, and mutually perpendicular to the plane here. In the two-dimensional case, due to the limitation, here it is shown by the tilted line here, and this is for the red component. So for this cube, every side is of the equal length here. So here we are considering only one unit. So one unit on the red component axis, green component axis and blue component axis here. So for this cube, the three corners you see are red, green and blue. And when you take the combinations of them, so that time you can get to the can, magenta and here we have the yellow here. And when you see the two leftover corners here, so you have a line which we call a grayscale line. The intersection of the three axes is basically the black color here, and the opposite diagonal corner here is the white here. So from black to that of the white, here it is the line we used to be working up till now into the grayscale image processing, the grayscale level here. So I hope the RGB color model, whenever you are asked the question about the RGB color model, you must draw this particular diagram. The diagram is very much simple here, and you can fill out your answer with the details as just now we have talked about the information. As just now we have discussed, we can write out in terms of the points as well. RGB values are at the three corners, red, green, blue as shown. Then the other three corners are can, magenta and yellow, and the two left out corners, the first one we talk about at the origin level, that is the black, and the next one, last one is the white here. So In this particular model, the grayscale points extends from black to that of the white, as I have shown you, and the different colors in this model are the points on or the inside the cube and are defined by the vectors extending from the origin here. So this is our RGB color model here. So to this RGB color model, there is one assumption also. The assumption is that all the color values have been normalized so that the cube shown is a unit cube here. Unit means a unit value 1. So all the values of the RGB are used, represented with the assumption that 0 is the least value and 1 is the max value here. So here, with the help of the RGB color model, we have the representation of the image here. So RGB color model consists of the three components, one for each primary color. When fed to the RGB monitor application, these three images combine on the screen to produce the resultant visualization here. The number of bits utilized to represent each pixel in RGB space is called as the pixel depth here. So if we have a consideration of the 8-bit environment for the RGB image with these three particular components, under the conditions each RGB pixel is said to have a depth of 24 bits. So 3 image planes times the number of bits per plane. The term full color image is used to denote the 24-bit RGB color image, and a total of colors, number of colors in the 24-bit RGB image is here. We have 1,67,77,216 colors here. So this much of fineness we obtain into the 24-bit RGB color model here. So the colorful model here I show, we had this illustration to just see the cube and the 24-bit color cube. Here it can be visualized here. So in your examination point of view, you cannot draw the colorful image, but the understanding should be there when you work on few of the practicals in your lab, or when you have this particular domain to work when you complete your degree here. So regarding the RGB color model, we have the RGB to be the most convenient way to have the visualization of these colors, generating different possibilities also. So these are shown with the faces or the cross sections of the cube as just now we have visualized here. So it can be accomplished by simply fixing one of the three colors and allowing the others to vary here. And here we have used the actual pixels rather than the mathematical convenient normalization values, as we discussed, 0 to 1. The reason is also cited here. And in the component images, here we have the representations by 0 and 255 for the corresponding black and that of the white here. Onto the grayscale scale, we can say the line from the origin position corner to its opposite end here. So here we have the color images. Those can be acquired by using the three filters which are sensitive to the red, green and blue. This way also we can describe it. And when we have a visualization of the color scheme with a monochrome camera equipped with one of these particular filters, the result is the monochrome image whose intensity is proportional to the response of the filter here. So the application, just now we have discussed about the color monitor. So how the generation of the RGB image is made here. Here we can show you. So for the red, we have selected the value 127. Then we have the complete G and complete B. You can see the result at the end on the right hand side here. The more details with respect to the RGB color model and this application you can get from these particular points, where what is the repetition to this particular process, then the high-end display cards associated with the various application, then the various values into the range also there we can have, and the parameters for the color model here we can have plotted. And actually the model RGB color model is supposed to be called by the safe RGB model here. So this is what the information you can get it with the number system and the color equivalents mapped to each other here. So I will just make the visualization of the RGB safe color cube here after completion of these information points regarding the hex and the decimal information corresponding to the different colors here. So here we have the RGB safe color cube. So in the earlier visualization of the cube, there it was not the markings as per the rows and the columns we go, but here the visualization is better, what is called as the RGB safe color cube here. In one cell we have the uniformity of the color here. Now as we have talked about, the color image processing can be divided into the two parts here, the full color image processing and the pseudo color image processing. So mostly we have the full color image processing. So this is the example of the safe color. When you compare it to the full color, so the cube is having the uniformity everywhere, the gradual change from one color to another color you can see here. And here the safe color cube, as just now we have discussed about. Now the effects into the visualization, I have the few illustrations where you can compare the red band with that of the green band, blue band, and compare to the complete stack of the three, the original image we can see here. So here onto the left hand side upper corner you see the original colorful image you see. So we have the flowers and fruits in this particular image along with the leaves and the cotton here. So when you take the individual band, that is either you take red, green or the blue, the corresponding visualizations you see. So there is no color discrimination between one object and the another in this particular scenario here. Another illustration also here we have. So here it is a painting. So this is the original colorful painting here, and when you take out the individual bands for the visualization by subtracting the other two here, when you take the individual red band, you see the dominance of the red color everywhere, and you cannot have the discrimination based on the color here. You can make the discrimination based on to the spatial dimensions, the shape, size of the particular object under scenario only. Similar is the case for the green band and the blue band here. So I hope with the help of this particular illustration, the RGB color model, the understanding of the red, green and blue, the components which makes the color image possible is clear to you people. The other way also we can work with the red band, green band and blue band. So for obtaining these individual ones, we have subtracted the two bands from the original case here. When you subtract only one band, so if this is the original image again, and when you subtract only red component, the combination of the green and the blue will be like this. You can see in the sum of the portions you have the blue component and the green component but no redness. In the second case, when you subtract only the green component, here it is the visualization, and in the third case when you subtract the blue, here is the combination here. So as you compare the last visualization with the original visualization of the image, you see blue component is very